of the news more critically. What how would you what do you think so far of like the Biden presidency? I have honestly like stopped digesting news since like the Trump presidency ended, and there wasn't a fire every 10 minutes. Like really like the first speech I've seen in the last several months that I like actually like willingly clicked and pressed was Biden talking about like doubling down on it being the correct decision to step out of Afghanistan. And like I thought that his reasoning was perfectly good. I think that it was like being in Afghanistan for as long as we have has already been like already a huge fuck up. But how else would you kind of like estimate the like the new presidency, the attempt to return to normalcy?
That is a great question that I'm not qualified to answer because I don't really watch the news. I have purposefully not read it, not watched it.
Hmm. So your
To my
sabbatical is also
husband's
from
dismay.
politics.
It's from, well, not really. It's a sabbatical from news, but it's not a sabbatical from understanding policy
Hmm.
and what happened in the past. So I've been very interested in uh, history.
Hmm.
And right now I'm reading this really interesting book called The Unwinding. It's by George Packer,
Hmm.
who shares the story of America through stories of actual people in the 1960s until today.
Hmm.
And I find that to be really interesting because one, it's not ideological since he's just writing stories.
Hmm.
So it's more similar to a novel where it's up to the reader to figure things out.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so there's stories, and also it helps to explain just why people do the things that they do. So
Hmm.
news is like all of the consequences of people's um, past. And so I'm very interested in what is the past that caused someone or some action to happen.
Hmm.
Uh, because I think that from the past, we can shape the future, and it's important to understand the past.
Hmm. Yeah. Like similarly in that vein, like there's this channel that I've been putting on the backlog for the longest time. Who they cover kind of like the background history uh behind one of my favorite video game franchises, the Metal Gear Solid series,
Mm.
which uses like a lot of American history as a backdrop, which also it has like it's a little it's fascinating in that it's researched and written and directed by a Japanese person. Um, but like all of it, everything, all of his criticism, extremely valid. All of like the historical research that he puts into naming, into story development, plot, is fantastic. But like this channel, this guy just all of the his videos are like 1 to 3 hours each, and it's like really dense history. Uh, but I recently watched one that's kind of like breaking down the Afghanistan situation, which was the backdrop for the most recent game, Metal Gear Solid 5, which takes place in Afghanistan and parts of Africa. And it really talks about like the rise of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, how the Taliban and like other terrorist groups came to power, and they like both behind besides being trained and supplied by the U.S. There was also like the unification, not necessarily of ethnicity, but against Western and just foreign influence, just because the area had always been like at war. A lot of people called Afghanistan like the place where empires came to die, uh, and just it put a lot of like the current situation into perspective, but also I don't know, it definitely made the game a lot more interesting to me because the plot it's already dense, and then like all the background stuff is just there's just so much information.
Yeah, I can imagine watching a video where you just have a lot of history tossed at you.
Hmm.
I I have learned from reading history that history is very opinionated, and
Hmm.
you can choose what sources you're going to include.
Hmm.
And I wish that in school we were taught more stories as opposed to just dry facts.
Hmm. Well, yeah, especially because a lot of those decided facts were they were written by people with opinions, like where like slaves were counted as immigrants in a lot of history books. They immigrated to the U.S. No, they were kidnapped and and robbed and raped and stolen. There were a lot of concerted efforts, particularly in the South, to keep in curriculums that like there were only certain white people. Civil War wasn't about slavery. Um, so I mean, I think the only issue is just like expedience, just because like stories it takes so long to get through them. Just imagine like, you know, your reading or English class and how long it took to get a kid to read a book. Uh,
Well, maybe that's the problem. Should get more kids to read books and to make it interesting.
Reading books is
Because
hard.
I what do you recommend instead of reading books?
I like video games. I feel like I've been learning a lot of things from video games recently, but like those take forever
Oh,
to
cool.
make. As a
Make a video game? Yeah.
as somebody who was a literature major and really hated reading, uh, like I don't know, it's very difficult to keep somebody's attention for like really anything, especially if they're like energized kids who just want to like play and learn. There's a lot of different like approaches now to education, but like I don't know how you're supposed to teach history more organically, really. I think a lot of like the fascination with history comes from seeing its value and how it relates to now. And it's really hard to get, a kid to understand that, especially because, their perspective is all, for the most part, egocentric.
Yeah, I think you're right. A kid's brain just isn't capable of handling this. Also, they haven't had the life experience
Hmm.
to make it relatable, as you said, to current
And
events.
most
Yeah, because
adults don't,
that's
most adults don't have the patience for it.
right. Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. So you were a literature major who hated reading.
Yep.
How did you get by?
Uh, the college equivalent of Spark Notes, where like I could read through things quickly, get the gist of it, and really a literature major was more being able to kind of like make an argument. It's not like your ability to read. Um, and I'm pretty good at like bullshitting arguments, I think.
So literature taught you how to bullshit arguments.
Yeah, I was closer to being a sophist than a proper philosopher of literature. But I think
Mm.
like video games and like learning different lore and manga now has been a lot of like the media that I've been consuming. I'm able to look at it more than just like, oh, cool explosions. Oh, this guy ripped his head off. There's like, there's more story to it. I look at God of War for its like continuation of like the Homeric epics rather than just like, uh, rip off, rip out Cyclops' eye, punch Zeus in the face.
I'm not a video game player now, but as a kid, I did play video games. I was very old school. This was back in the day. I
Hmm.
had a Sega Genesis, and I played
Ooh.
Sonic, my favorite game.
Which one? One, two, three.
All of them.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then I played Lara Croft Tomb Raider, which I
Hmm.
understand that has a pretty good story to it.
Hmm.
But I
There's
was
a
too
new
young.
there are new ones that are coming out that like are more about her backstory. If you're interested in like modern gaming, and then in terms of Sonic the Hedgehog, there's one that came out recently. A lot of like Sonic games have been garbage. Um, but like there was one that came out that was actually made by like huge Sonic fans, and it's essentially like the first three game a love letter to the first three games. Sonic Mania. I'd highly recommend checking that out.
Okay, nice. What is the console?
It's on Steam. But I'm pretty so Steam is like the PC
Oh, okay.
thing for a lot of video games. But I'm pretty sure Sonic Mania came out for most platforms. I know it's on Switch. I think it's on PlayStation and Xbox. Yeah,
Do you have to use a keyboard, or
you could use a
is there
keyboard or a
like a
video game
joystick?
controller.
A video game controller. Okay.
Yeah, I use
Yeah,
a. Sorry, go on.
there's something so nice about just having a controller in your hands
Hmm.
with like the keys and you can click on it.
Hmm.
That's what I miss about video games, having that kinesthetic
Yeah.
contact with the
Uh,
controller.
the nice thing with Steam is that it offers support for like most controllers. So I have a Nintendo Switch and I use a Nintendo Pro controller, but that also works for Steam and it works like wirelessly. I'd say
Oh, cool.
the thing that I miss the most with controllers is the ability to just like plug it in and it works. Now like
Mm.
most things, yeah, they connect wirelessly and just like syncing them up is always a fucking bitch. It's always the most annoying thing trying to like play with somebody next to you and have to get another controller to work. Oh, that's my gripe. That's my soapbox for the day.
um, Continuing on this video game topic,
Mhm.
do you play with other people or just on your own?
I like to play with other people, but I have played a lot of like solo games by myself for a long time. Um, I think my only issue with a lot of either co-op or like games that are just competitive with the person next to you, like there's like the fun aspect to it, there's the competition aspect to it, but like you kind of lose some of the story. Um,
Hmm.
like everybody knows Mortal Kombat for like ripping each other's heads off and like sawing each other's dicks off, but nobody really knows too much of like what is going on in the story. It's actually one of the things I'm trying to do. So I started doing a Mochi stream where I'm playing games and doing
Mm.
like Mochi essential gaming, where I kind of go I play a few hours of the game that I'm talking about, but I also give some of like the contextual background of like the time that it came out in, the history of the franchise, the development team, and then a little bit about like why the game is so influential. So I did it with Final Fantasy X this past 2 weeks, and then these next 2 weeks I'm gonna do it with Mortal Kombat that came out in 2011. Uh, yeah, and
That's awesome. Uh,
that's my pitch.
mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to join. I'm probably not going to get a console, but I have been playing this game my friend introduced me to. It's called Hack.
Hmm.
It's a computer game where it looks like Terminal, and it also so there's a story, and through that story you need to put in terminal commands, and in the process you also learn JavaScript.
The game's called Hack.
It's called Hack MD. It's the first computer game that I played in a long time, but I realized I'm not a gamer because I didn't get addicted to it. After about a week, I got bored and stopped.
Oh, Hack MD, as in like medical doctor.
Yeah, as a medical doctor. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You get transported to a different world and you're stuck. And so you are communicating with uh, different actors, agents who are trying to help you to get unstuck. And in order to get unstuck, you have to put in commands into terminal, and really it's all JavaScript and Java.